The voice of sharing Durian ASEAN.
Hi, this is Arlene,
Hi, this is Gowri.
and you are listening to Durian ASEAN again, the voice of discovery and sharing. In our Blast from the Grassroots today, we are going to discuss with Angela Kuga. She claimed herself to be the third generation of Malaysian. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine too. And today we're going to talk about deconstructing the Bangsa Malaysia identity. First of all, maybe can you describe what is your cultural and heritage background?
My father was a Ceylonese Tamil. He's passed away now.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom is Baba Chinese, or what people call Chinese Peranakan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I come from a mixed heritage. And my father's family was Hindu, and my mom's family was Catholic. So he actually converted into Catholicism, and then he actually his first name became our family name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So growing up, were you aware of your own like racial or religious identity? Does it shape the way you see yourself as a Malaysian, or do you even associate yourself with that national identity?
No, definitely, I do feel Malaysian. I think coming from a mixed heritage, there's a lot of richness. I particularly remember, for example, for example, my mom's family, because my mom's family, she had a lot of sisters. Most of them, of course, have passed away right now. But I remember when I visit them, because a couple of them would stay quite close to each other. So in the kitchen, with the women would gather, and my cousins would be there, and they'd be joking and laughing, and they'd speak very honestly about things which today is considered quite taboo socially. Mm-hmm. For example, sex, domestic violence, very sexual jokes. And even though we were children, I can't remember whether the boys were there. Like my male cousins, I can't remember whether they were there, but I remember my younger male cousins were there, and I was there, and I was like, maybe like 8 to 10 years old. But they didn't see us as children. They just saw us as just there, as someone, within that space. And it was nice. I mean, I really enjoyed those moments where the women just talked very frankly, and organically they sort of became a support group of their own, without anyone sort of leading the initiative per se, like leading and getting people together and, to become a sort of peer support group. But I remember, there was a lot of laughter and jokes and just frank conversations and honest conversations,
Interesting. When throughout the years, the government, regardless of whichever prime minister that we have, always emphasis on the idea of Bangsa Malaysia. Although at the same time, they are fringe group of people emphasizing on either their racial identity or their religious identity. What is your definition of Bangsa Malaysia, if there is one?
I think the attempt to define a Malaysian race, I think it's confusing. Mm-hmm. It's as if we never had an identity, and we did. Just to sort of go back historically. I mean, like even the different races, the acceptance of different races, the acceptance of different genders. Historically, we were much more accepting, right? So in terms of a Malaysian race per se, we were I would consider quite inclusive. I don't know if I'm being romantic, but because it's my history, right? It's my personal journey as well. So I can't really generalize for the whole nation, but this is from memory, because even when I was growing up, as a child of mixed heritage, I had like one teacher who taught us the BM language, and she said children of mixed heritage don't have a culture, and
Oh, really?
and I was quite angry with that, because I felt that I had a very rich culture. Like my mom's family in particular, it was very obvious because her sisters married outside of the Baba Chinese clan, even though racially they're considered Chinese, but they don't consider themselves Chinese, the Baba Chinese themselves, because
they see themselves as what if they don't consider themselves as Chinese?
Well, ethnically they are different because they adopt the Malay culture, the Malay language, and so they don't feel like they actually belong to the Chinese race per se. So like even though my aunt married one of my aunts married a Chinese, it was different because she had to learn the Chinese language, right? And a lot of my aunts married outside. I had an uncle who is a Punjabi. I had uncles who had themselves mixed heritage, Portuguese heritage. I had then my father himself was Ceylonese Tamil, so almost, in fact, I'm very sure that all of them married outside, the Baba Chinese clan. So, but on my father's side, even though I think my father was the first one who married outside of Ceylonese Tamil clan, and being the oldest son in a Hindu family, that was really quite a huge controversy. Because as the oldest Hindu son, there were certain rituals that you have to perform, or there's a weight in terms of when you marry, like, there are certain traditions that people expect, like dowry and stuff like that. So he just broke out of that mold, and I think a few other, like his younger brother also married outside, but not. He married another Indian woman from a different denomination. So, and that was big for Ceylonese at that time.
Oh, really? It was?
Yeah. Not to sound racist, but it was that mentality of like which some communities or some families still hold on to, where you shouldn't marry outside of a particular race or religion, and they're very particular about who you end up being with as a life partner. But even this younger uncle, my father's youngest brother, I could see his relationship with this woman was very loving, and I think that diversity and embracing of differences makes us better human beings, because we can actually deal with differences, So this notion of a Malaysian identity, I think even the Ministry of Tourism exploits this diversity, right? In their advertisements, show the different, not only the different races and ethnicities, but the different religions, So obviously we do have an identity. We do have a very multicultural, multi-religious identity, an identity of diversity. And that for me is the Malaysian identity. But what's happening today is that there's attempts to, reject certain identities, almost to the point of trying to create an ideal identity or a purification of our identity, which I think is the wrong way to go about it, because what makes Malaysia unique is that very cultural diversity, that very multi-religious, because I've met like, families of different heritage, and they have families who have married also outside of their supposed race or ethnicity, and different religions, and they all come together and they celebrate all their festivals, and so they find it, they find this strange that the state would want us to just embrace a particular identity. They find it really odd.
Do you feel like it's easier for someone with a diverse heritage to feel more Malaysian as opposed to someone with just one race, maybe?
Yeah, or someone who is only exposed to a mono-race environment.
I really cannot speak for someone of that heritage. Because when I was growing up, I mixed with all kinds of races, and I didn't have a problem fitting in. People accepted me. I think it's really about attitude. It's not so much about whether you're from one particular race or whether you have that kind of multiple cultural diversity in terms of your background, right? In terms of your experiences. But I think it's really about attitude. It's about your perception of the other, your perception of difference, and whether you appreciate that, and how you actually either embrace that or reject it. Because and that that happens because a lot of hate has been fostered in the country. I've noticed a huge change in terms of what's compared to how I grew up and what the environment was like compared to now, and I don't know if I was sheltered in a certain way, but when I go to spaces where it's predominantly one race, and because my skin color is, I look like a Malay, right?
You look like in between. It's hard to categorize you.
I know, like it's like coffee tea mix kind of thing, but you can see sometimes the hatred, or you can face the discrimination that a particular race has against another, right? Because I sort of have that kind of face where I fall everywhere. I can fall, people who can identify me as Indian, they do, So you see that kind of discrimination and you witness it, even though you are not you're not actually the target per se, right? Because you just happen to look and have the appearance of such. And I don't really blame them, because I think there are a lot of policies that are just very wrongly implemented and very wrongly designed in the country, especially when it comes to addressing poverty. I've studied some statistics that comes out from our Department of Statistics, and basically the proportion of poor within the Chinese community is the same within the Malay community. So there's a proportionate number of poor, right? And not every, this assumption that every Chinese person is good at business. I think it's
there's a lot of stereotypes going on, isn't it? Within this country, like if you're of a certain race, that means you are good at one thing, or you are better at this certain thing.
Yeah, and the irony is that the new, the economic policy was meant to rectify that, right? Rectify those stereotypes. But at the same time, there's this assumption that, the Chinese will do well in business. They have their own networks and contacts. But the reality is that there are Chinese who don't excel in doing business, who struggle, and there are many poor people, many poor, farmers, or fishermen, and we need to change our mindset. We need to just recognize people as Malaysians and move forward, and embrace the diversity.
And one thing I want to highlight is you are also a social activist, and one of the area that you focus on, which is on the LGBT rights of what do you think of societal acceptance towards this group of people who have a different sort of gender compared to the mainstream idea of female and male? And how well do they accept this marginalized identity within the larger mainstream society in Malaysia?
Currently, there's definitely a much higher level of discrimination and persecution, because it's also been politicized, right? So going back to this politics of hate, politics of divide and conquer, I think those leaders of ours, or self-appointed leaders of ours, who thrive on fostering hate or racism and any kind of antagonistic sentiments, based on our differences, they fool themselves into thinking that they can actually control that kind of emotion. They fool themselves into thinking that they can manipulate that kind of emotion. And with the LGBT, it's been politicized completely to suit the politics of this country, to further to try and show that we have a common enemy when in fact we don't. There are many LGBT who contribute to society and who contribute to the economy, who are taxpayers, and they are citizens. The whole notion of citizenry and citizenship rights, it's not. It feels like it's not mature enough in this country. It's like the citizens in Malaysia are beholden to the government rather than the reverse, where the government is supposed to be beholden to the peoples of Malaysia.
When did this happen? Like, was it something that is recent, or it happened during Mahathir's time, or even prior to Mahathir?
Well, I've read a lot of documents, and I feel that it became entrenched institutionally in the early 1980s, and that's when Mahathir entered into power, and because there's this drive to push Islam as the superior or the dominant identity in this country, and that's for me alienates a lot of Malaysians. I think it even alienates, if I may say, some of the Malay Muslims as well, and Muslims themselves, because a lot of them feel that this is not the way of Islam. So I think it became entrenched institutionally, and that became more difficult than to sort of destabilize or unsettle, because when you have institutions pushing for this kind of agenda, you have people who rely on jobs within those institutions and salaries, and how do you unsettle that, because they feel they would also feel threatened, and that's only human nature.
One thing I want to highlight about the government is, it's not that they haven't done anything. Of course, with the Najib government, there's One Malaysia. But prior to Najib government, there were initiatives such as setting up the Unity Department and programs that enhance community service and all that. But it seems like societal has somehow still living in their own silos or cocoons. What are the key challenges that probably the government should do in terms of the government should overcome in terms of making Malaysia a more inclusive and tolerant society?
Well, you can have all these set up, right? You can have the Unity Council. You can have all these other things set up, even policies, great policies set up. But if you don't have any cohesion within the government machinery, right? That's why I say it's confusing, this One Malaysia identity drive or campaign, because the message itself becomes confusing when the political rhetoric is different in different spaces, So if you have, for example, the Malay media saying certain things and nothing to do with one Malaysia, but it's if it's all racism and it's all about, how alien is the other, how alien are the other races, or leaders still calling third generation Malaysians as pendatang asing, then you confuse the issue. You are not sincere. There's no sincerity, and to treat citizens as people who cannot perceive insincerity, I think that's also a folly. It's a huge mistake. So these attempts, I believe that there are people within this the government who are sincere about pushing these kinds of unity agendas, but at the same time you have other elements or stakeholders who are pushing against it, and I think it's important to understand where is this fear coming from, where is this fear about unity coming from. Because it's a very real fear for some people, about being left behind. And I think it's because of the failure of our economic policies, to really reduce the gap between the poor and even the middle income and the rich, because what's happening is that the relative poverty is becoming wider and wider within Malaysia, and society, having feeling frustrated with their economic survival, they're going to resort to different avenues to gain a sense of self-worth. They're going to resort to different avenues where they can be persuaded to follow a particular agenda or to follow a particular mindset without really knowing who is their oppressor,
Mm-hmm. So with you, what's your Malaysia Day message and also Merdeka Day message to all the listeners of Durian ASEAN?
I really like what the Star is trying to do, and I think
the moderate Malaysians.
Yeah, because I think that there's a higher realization that we are on the brink of no return if we don't try and counter and make visible the moderate voices. And so, to all Malaysians, I think, my message would be Malaysian, be the open-hearted, generous Malaysians that we all know and have witnessed, because I've witnessed it during my lifetime, and I still witness it, and it's there, it exists, rather than to embrace all that hate or anger and distrust. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my message.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Angela.
Thanks, Arlene.
Welcome.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.